Hello, this is the Ancient History backup stream or backup video on Monday, September 14th, 2020. So we will carry over the camera and get going. Okay. So, those of you who are looking at the handout I just gave, a handout which you at home will be getting at some point in the future, like tomorrow when you show up, is a set of exemplars on A-plus work from my European history students on Unit 12. They had to do Chapter Survey 12. You have to do Chapter Survey 1 coming up. Now, this is on the old format, but you're smart. You can transfer the understanding of what earned A-plus is here with your work on the Unit 1 in the new format. It is really not very different at all. I suggest that you look these over and see the degree to which the questions are answered, the details that are used, because this will give you an idea, even though you don't know Chapter 13, unless you are, above and beyond, you feel, or Chapter 12, unless you're above and beyond and you feel like reading Chapter 12 just for the fun of it, to learn about early modern Europe and the Renaissance and such. But here we have 5 people's A-plus works. Their first page and their second page. I did not include maps because a good map is pretty obvious. So, if you are wondering, how can I do well on that chapter survey? What is the sort of thing I should be shooting for? Here is an example of what you should do. I have you slide a little bit apart, you two, just so that there's a little more space. Gracias. So, any questions about this? I'm also going to be handing back some work. When I do, please, when I say your name, please make a noise indicating, or wave, or both, who you are. I'm also going to be reading off people who are here on B days, just because you're all mixed up. So, Mr. Presser is not here, right? Mr. Lowe is here. Ms. Campbell, where are you? There you are. Ms. Crawford. There. Ms. Michelson. Miss Duffy. There you are. Miss Burke. Miss Burke. Madison Burke. Not here. Mr. Dixon. Miss Baldwin.
Right.
All right. Miss Flores. Thank you for making a definitive noise. Miss Pepin. Okay. Miss Golubiewski. Not here. Mr. Duncan. Not here. Miss Davis. Not here. And Mr. Reynolds. Not here. Miss Duffield. Not here. Miss Beagleman. Not here. Mr. Hermsmeyer. Not here. Miss Daigle. Not here. Miss Foster. Not here. Bon. Good. So, what?
Was this the heat in 2001?
Yes.
I turned that in online.
Okay.
I filled it out and then scanned it and sent it.
Okay, have you gotten graded for it yet?
I don't think so.
Okay, I graded everything on Saturday.
Okay, I'll look up.
So look it up, and if it's still not graded, just send it to me as an attachment on an email. Okay? In future, please do a paper copy and turn it in.
Okay.
The only people I really want online work from is people who are fully online. Everyone else, I really want paper. Lumbermen need jobs, trees are a crop, but more than that, it's much, much, much easier for me to read correct. Okay? Thank you. So, on Friday, you had your first assignment where I really lectured, and I expected you to write 3 comments of thoughtful response. They might have been a question with your positive answer, or it could be something else. But 3 thoughtful paragraphs. I have not begun to even look at them yet. I'll look at them over the next few days or so. When I do, I hope that I will be able to award good grades to everyone for making thoughtful commentary. They were due before classes begun today. So, if for whatever reason you have not yet done this, you'd best get it done sooner than later. I don't know if the system will show it as a late assignment. It might. And if it does, in this case, I will assign a late penalty because you've had from Friday until Monday to do it. This will be the first time, but of many times, that you'll have to do that, which is look at the video and write 3 thoughtful comments in the public comment section under the video. Were there any questions about that? Okay, now here's a memory test. Where did I leave off on Friday? Good?
My assumption is you left off when we had just finished the whole part of Moses just got everyone out of Egypt, and
Why
now
are
they're
you
going.
assuming?
What?
Why are you assuming? If you watched it, you said my assumption is.
Yeah.
Why don't you just say I know? Because if you watched it, you know. It's not an assumption.
Because part of it might have left my memory.
Okay, fair enough. Please go on. So, when Moses leads the Israelites out of bondage in Egypt, you're basically right. You are basically right. Does anyone wish to add to that with detail? Ms. Pepper.
Got the tablets.
The 10 Commandments, either carved by the fiery finger of God or one of his angels, or carved into Moses' mind and heart by God and wrought into stone letters by the stonecutter Joshua. Either way, when Moses comes down and sees the sitting around the false god, the golden calf, he basically makes it very clear that you're either with God or you're against God. And if you're against God, he wings the tablets and literally the earth swallows you up. Now, I showed you clips from the 1950s movie, The 10 Commandments, which, if you've never seen it all the way through, is a lovely film. It is a wonderful film. It's reverent. It is well researched. It used Jewish Christians and Christian scholars in the writing to try to make sure that the Hollywood didn't get in the way of scriptural truth. And it definitely goes with the overt magical miracle approach to religion, which I talked about. For some people, it matters, really matters to their faith. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just trying to draw distinctions between different types of faith. For some faithful people, it really matters that God violates his own laws of nature from time to time as signs that he is the boss of nature. It's like when we cover Christianity, we'll talk about the raising of Lazarus from the dead. And you might ask, well, why does Jesus raise this guy? Why doesn't he raise more people if he can raise people from the dead? And the answer that theologians have is that Lazarus was somebody Jesus knew. Jesus spent many days in Lazarus' home. Mary and Martha, Lazarus' sisters, were close followers. So Lazarus was a part of his world. But the reason he brings Lazarus back from the dead, theologians say, of many denominations, they agree on this. By raising Lazarus from the dead, Jesus is signaling that he and his connection to God the Father are more powerful than death. Now, death is one of the universal things we all are going to experience sooner or later. And it is something that really weighs on some people. So for God to demonstrate mastery over death by bringing somebody back who had died, and he wasn't just dead a little while, he was dead for 3 days. The body had begun to decompose. The body had begun to reek. And he was brought back. So this is not a case of somebody who had fallen asleep and was mistaken for being dead. The purpose of that miracle was to demonstrate God's power over it. So many people believe that the miracles that you hear about or see about in the Bible are demonstrations that God is sort of saying, here, pay attention to this. I'm violating my own laws so that I can prove a point. There are other people who are just as faithful, but who approach it differently and say that God can work within the physical laws and without having to do many supernatural things and still be God. For example, was it the Red Sea, one of the world's great seas that was parted, like in the movie, or was it the Sea of Reeds, and did the sea rush in after the high tide came in over a particularly volatile bit of lowland and swamped the Egyptian chariots? Was Moses able to watch the fiery finger of an angelic hand or of God's own finger carving the Ten Commandments, or was it in fact done through the more mundane means, but still religiously significant means of God speaks to Moses, speaks to Joshua, who carves? That depends on your faith, and most denominations will leave certain things up to you. They'll say these things, if you're one of us, you have to believe these things. But these things you can have your own opinions about. Just think about them. What did you think of the Ten Commandments? What did you think of the scenes that I showed you? Were they interesting? Were they plausible? Did they give you a sense of miracle? Did they give you a sense of what the Scripture was talking about? This is the question I will ask whoever I roll on. So, let's see. We will start with Miss, say it again.
Crawford.
Miss Crawford. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ooh, we got 10 people. So you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. What do you roll? Please.
Just on the table? Or?
Yes, please. Okay. Thank you. Number 1. You rolled yourself. That is an ethical choice. You're not throwing anyone under the bus except for yourself.
Yeah.
So, what are your comments on the Ten Commandments, the clips you showed?
For the clips, I think it was very interesting by points that he regarded them as. Because he
Remember, by the way, if you choose to, you can pull your mask down while you speak. You don't have to. It's up to you.
Okay. Because he definitely regarded them as something very holy to him, and he held it in like high expense. And he did smash them at the bottom of Mount Sinai.
Mm-hmm.
So that tells me that he was trying to make definitely a religious point with them, but the whole prospect of whether they were like actually carved up on the mountain is something, you just think about for yourself.
No, that's fair. Thank you for your thoughtful answer. I'll take a volunteer if we have one, otherwise I'll roll again. What did you think of the Ten Commandments scenes and the way they approached what was written in Scripture? Yes?
Well, I was going to say I think that they did a good job of representing what happened, at least in the Bible. And I do think that, my personal belief is that they all were miracles that actually did happen.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2 of my paragraphs, I was like explaining how I think it works from a religious viewpoint. And I still think that, and overall, I think that the movie just did a good job of representing it.
It was certainly trying to be reverential. In fact, one of the differences between the Ten Commandments from the 50s and any movie made today, for example, Paul, Apostle of Christ, or The Passion of the Christ back 15 years ago now, is there is a solemnity, a respect, a reverence that everyone has. Jesus is not even shown in many of the movies. People look at him and you see the look in their eyes when they behold him, but they don't show Jesus, not until films in the 1960s, because it was considered to be disrespectful. So today, we've gone to such another extreme culturally that you almost need a movie like that's as bloody as the Passion of the Christ, that gets you really in there to the flogging and the torture that Jesus went through, the crown of thorns that pierced his head and hit his skull, and all the blood and all the gore, because we expect that kind of intimacy. I kind of miss the old movies. I'm old, so.
Okay, so I went from my whole life I went to Christian schools, and I never knew about it. Never, and that kind of blew my mind. And I did more research on it, and now I'm kind of like fan about it because I'm like, wow, I never knew this.
I still learn things about my own faith, and I'm almost 56. One of the joys that a person has if they have a personal religious belief is at different times in their life they can do research and they can explore and they can learn more. And it really is, it's a different world. It's a fascinating world. I love it. For example, archaeologically, some people in northwestern Arabia say that they know the spot where, and there's a story where Moses breaks a rock open and water flows out of it. And the local Arabs have said, yeah, that's Moses' rock. But they don't tell people from the outside much. So they finally got some outside archaeologists who the locals trusted enough. And so now we have this notion, at least, that there's some archaeological evidence, because the rock looks weird. It's in the middle of the desert, but it looks like there's water erosion. That this might have actually been where they were. So yeah, I love the fact that there's always something new to learn. And that's a great attitude to have. Anything else?
No, that's
Okay. Any other volunteers on that? Some people will say, oh, the special effects, they're so cheesy. I'm going to tell you something. The first time I saw, and I'm sorry about the quality of the video, but the first time I saw the Angel of Death, that sort of green, fingery, gassy cloud going down, it scared me like crazy. It scared me worse than any movie I had seen up until that point. It was fearsome. And God in the Old Testament is not warm, fuzzy, loving God. God in the Old Testament destroys whole cities. God in the Old Testament floods out the world. God has a temper. And in the New Testament, when Jesus' temper comes out, he whips the money changers and yells at them. In the Old Testament, when God the Father has anger issues or gets angry with somebody, they will pay. It's a totally different. It's the same God, but you're seeing different aspects. Anyway, hope you enjoyed those clips. They're some of my favorites. So now we're going to go on with the story of the ancient Hebrews. Moses leads them through the wilderness, but he's not allowed to enter the Holy Land, the Promised Land, the land flowing with milk and honey, because he got angry with God. And you don't get angry with God. At least if you're Moses. So Moses is left behind on a mountain to die, and the tribe goes in. But let's look at this from a non-religious standpoint. The Hebrews that go into the Holy Land after 40 years in the wilderness are people who survived without any help except from God for 40 years in one of the harshest environments on the planet. These guys don't have an ounce of water fat. These guys don't have an ounce of body fat. They are lean, mean fighting machines. They have been, all the weak have been winnowed out. This is the strong, hard core of Hebrews. And when they come into the land of Canaan, there's the story of Joshua blowing his horn and the walls of Jericho falling. But the truth is, man for man, they're tougher than anyone they're going to fight. And so they conquer. And you come a few hundred years later to a time of David. The Hebrews had conquered the land of Canaan. But recently, a people of the sea called the Philistines have been rowing and sailing along the shores and establishing seaside colonies. And these colonies threaten Israel. They threaten the Jewish nations. So the Hebrews, the Israelites, try to fight. But in fact, the Philistines are really good warriors. So the Philistines begin taking away the coastal zones of Israel. Well, there's a time when the Philistines are marching inland, and the king of the Israelites, Saul, unifies the Israelite army, and they're going to fight the Philistines. And so Saul that morning, he's on one side of the valley, the Philistines are on the other side, the big flat valley in between. And all of a sudden, as Saul is making his final battle plans to win the battle, there's a tumult at the other end of the camp. And people start shouting that the prophet is here. The prophet is here. Oh, great, Saul says. The prophet. So while I'm trying to plan a battle that could mean the end of our people, I get to talk to this religious fellow who is completely difficult to deal with because he has no patience with anything that's ungodly. So, okay, fine, I gotta, my people are believers, so please invite the prophet in. Oh, prophet, what do you want? Prophet says, there's not going to be a battle today. King Saul says, what? There's not going to be a battle today. The Lord has made it clear. Okay, do you want to tell it to the invading Philistines? Don't worry, the prophet says. We're going to do this with champions. Champions! Our enemy outnumbers us. They have better equipment than us. Believe me, I'd love it if champions were a way that we could settle this. But I think you may have some trouble convincing them. So the prophet says, don't worry about it. Send a delegation, propose champions. They'll go for it. God told me so. Okay, why not? Send a delegation, ask. So the delegation goes over to the Philistine army and asks, can we handle this through champions? You send out your guy, we send out our guy. Winner takes the field, loser goes home for the season. And the Philistines look at one another, and their leaders say, yeah, sure, champions. We have a guy. We'll send him out in 15 minutes. So the delegates go back, and to Saul's surprise, yeah, we've got champions. They're going for it. Okay, Saul says, well, I've got a few commandos. And the prophet says, no, you don't understand. God has chosen a champion. And it's not going to be one of your battle-hardened commanders. It's going to be this 14-year-old shepherd boy who has got no military training. Saul's blood pressure spikes. Oh, the fate of the nation. And God said to you, crazy prophet guy, that it's this kid who has no war experience at all, who doesn't even have weapons except for a little sling. It's got to be the king. What am I going to do? My people are believers. Prophet has said, it's going to be this boy. It's going to be this boy. So David, the little boy, shepherd boy, it's going to be you. And David has already been talked to by the prophet. David believes. So David says, okay, I'll do my best. What else can I do? I'll do my best. So David walks out. And then the earth begins to shake. And the sea of Philistine soldiery parts. And out comes this guy that's a full half a body taller than any other Philistine. He's like Andre the Giant meets Stone Cold Steve Austin meets John Cena. He is like a massive supergiant professional wrestler. And his name is Goliath. And because he's a soldier, in addition to a wrestler, Goliath, this muscle-bound mountain of a man, is wearing full body armor and full weapons. So he goes out. The Philistines are cheering because it's Goliath. And they look at David and they laugh. And the Israelites are, I don't believe this. The prophet says, don't worry. God has made it so that it will be okay. So Goliath walks up and as if to say, hey kids, nothing personal. Don't make me get angry and have to chase you. Let's just do this straight up. I'll kill you quick. We can go home and it'll be fine. I'll kill you quick. And David is terrified because he's not stupid. And he can see that he's about a quarter of the mass and a third of the height of Goliath. But he decides he's going to fight. And that is the moment that the sculptor Michelangelo captures in his statue of David. David's decision to fight. So he gets a rock, puts it in this little shepherd sling, and bam! Right between the eyes, in the forehead, caves in the front of the skull. Down goes Goliath! Down goes Goliath! David is standing there. You could hear a pin drop. And then the Israelites begin to cheer. Blessed be the name of the Lord. The Philistines are shocked, but they're people of their words. They take Goliath's body and they leave. What else are they going to do? It doesn't make any sense. So that shepherd boy is a hero, and very soon he becomes king, and Saul is out because Saul is so difficult for the prophets to deal with. Anyway, David is that rarity in history. He is a Jewish conquering king. David expands Israel to go from the northeastern Egyptian border all the way up to the Syrian border. Israel is actually a dominant country for 2 generations under King David and his son King Solomon. So this is a high point. It's 3,000 years ago. It's 1000 BC. David is in charge of Israel. And then when David dies, his son Solomon takes over. And Solomon is proverbial for his wealth and his wisdom. The wisdom of Solomon. I'll give you an example. One of the jobs that a king has is to hold court, to be like a judge, to be a judge. And so Solomon is sitting on his judgment seat, his throne, and he's hearing a case, and out in the hallway he can hear an argument, and he looks at his herald and indicates that there should be quiet. So the herald goes out, quiet! Finishes his case. Next case. 2 women come in, and they start harroting, they start, silence! Boom, the herald says. Solomon says, okay, one at a time, starting with you, tell me the story. You'll get your chance, say nothing until I tell you. So you, one of the women, thank you for letting me use you as examples, says, I'm sorry to bother you, King, but I can't help it. I went through a difficult pregnancy. I finally had a baby boy, beautiful baby boy, and she stole it! She started, no, I didn't, and boom, silence! So your claim is that she stole your baby and claimed it as her own? Yes. Your claim is that she did the same thing and you just stole it back? Yes. Solomon says. Okay, I've got the answer. Put the baby on this table here. Such a cute kid. See why you both like him. Okay, captain of the guard. She gets the left half, she gets the right half, slice it right down the middle. Again, there's shock. There's silence. You could hear a pin drop. And finally, one of the women, it doesn't matter who, says, no, I was wrong. I'm a bad person. Throw me in a dungeon, throw away the key. Just give the baby to her. It's her baby. I want nothing to do with it. Just leave the baby alone. At which point, Solomon says, it's your kid. It doesn't matter whose biological kid it is. Solomon found a way to find out which of the 2 women cared more about the good of the baby than about winning the argument. You didn't care about winning the argument. You were ready to lose. You were begging for doom to fall upon you, as long as the baby was all right. Whether or not the baby has your genes, your blood, you care more about the baby than winning, you're going to be a better mother. That's the deal. That is the proverbial wisdom of Solomon. But all good things come to an end. Golden ages never last. Civilizations rise and fall. And soon the Hebrews are in serious trouble. Generations after the wisdom of Solomon and the power of David, Israel is threatened. Babylon has taken over Mesopotamia, has invaded Syria, and is going to try to conquer the lands between Syria and Egypt, which is Israel and Judah. The Jewish land has by this point broken into 2 kingdoms mutually hostile. And Jerusalem is in the path of the invading Babylonian army. So the Babylonians conquer one Israelite kingdom. They conquer Israel, they conquer Judah. They conquer Jerusalem, the holy city of the Jews. Now when Babylon conquers they're not just the armies and the king of Babylon involved. It's also their hero god Marduk. Marduk, who slayed the great dragon Tiamat to create life in the world. Marduk, the champion god of Babylon that they worship. Whenever Babylon wins a war, Marduk defeats the local gods and takes their place. And so when Babylon conquers the Jews, Babylon insists that all worship of Yahweh is expunged and that all will now worship the triumphant god Marduk. After all, if Yahweh was worth his salt, the Babylonians say, he would have had the Jews and Jerusalem win the battle. He didn't. Therefore, Marduk is stronger than him. Therefore, Marduk is the supreme god. To which the Jews say, we've won and lost many wars in our history, but what makes us us is that we are God's chosen people, and we cannot give up our faith. To which the Babylonians said, that's not how it works. We won the war. You guys are supposed to worship our God. Do it! I'm sorry, we can't. Oh, really? We'll help you. This is the first diaspora, the first division of the Jews. Jews far away from Jerusalem in the countryside are largely left alone, but the population of Jerusalem and its suburbs are scooped up by the Babylonians and transported to the great city of Babylon as captives. This is called the Babylonian captivity. It lasts around 70, 80 years. And during the Babylonian captivity, the Babylonians, under several kings, including Nebuchadnezzar, one of their greatest, decide to have some fun with the Jews. Like, one of the things that makes Jewish kosher laws what they are is a refusal to eat pig meat of any kind. So what we're going to do is we're going to get 100 Jews, throw them in a cave. No food. Except every 3 days we'll slaughter a pig and we'll give them some. We'll see which Jews choose to starve to death, which Jews choose to eat the pig meat and give up their God, and which Jews end up deciding, to go cannibal rather than eat pig meat. Either way, they're damned, so they might as well eat the pig meat. Let's see what happens. And they'll watch, and they'll cheer, and they'll bet, because this is fun for the Babylonians. This sort of sadistic activity goes on. Now, there's a Jewish prophet named Daniel that ultimately becomes an advisor to several Babylonian kings. But his test is to be thrown into a lion's den with several hungry lions. And the Babylonians were like, yeah, if he's a man of his God, this God will protect him from the lions. They're hungry, right? Yeah, we haven't fed them in days, right? Yeah, they're really angry. Yeah, the handlers come by and they poke them, so they hate people right now. Yeah. Okay, throw Daniel in. Daniel lives through the night. He is not made into lion food. So Daniel's wisdom is taken seriously, but the Jews are still held captive. Babylonian captivity goes on and on, year after bloody year, until Cyrus the Great, Achaemenid king of Persia, conquers Babylon as part of the building of the Persian world empire. Cyrus the Great says to the captive Jews in Babylon, go home, build your temple, have fun, worship your God. Just give us earth and water to signify your submission, obey my basic laws, and if I need troops, send them to me, and pay your taxes. To which the Jews say, you, Cyrus, are an agent of the Lord. You may be Zoroastrian, you may have your other beliefs, but God works through the most strange and mysterious agents. And if God chooses to work through the Zoroastrian king of king of Persia, so be it. So Cyrus the Great is considered to be a great friend of the Israelites and an agent of the Lord God Almighty, because he frees the Jews and ends the Babylonian captivity. So the Jews lived for hundreds of years under Babylonian rule. Hundreds of years. Until the Greeks. The Persians try to conquer the Greeks in the 490s and 480s BC. They fail. 150 years later, Greece is conquered by the Macedonians, a bunch of barbarians from north of Greece. And the barbarian Macedonians unify Greece by saying, we're going to go conquer the Persians and pay them back for invading Greece 150 years ago. The first king to propose this, Philip, is killed, assassinated by his political enemies, leaving his teenage son Alexander to succeed him. Nobody expects much from the young man. Did not know who they were messing with. Alexander captures and arrests all of the assassins, unifies Greece, and then invades Persia. In a halcyon 12-year campaign, at battles like Issus and Gaugamela, Alexander conquers the world empire of Persia, including Israel. In fact, Alexander marches through Israel to get to Egypt, and through Israel again to go east of Syria into Mesopotamia. Here's the problem with the Greeks and the Jews. The Jews consider themselves to be God's chosen people. They're not the most powerful people in the world. They're not the most educated people in the world. They're not the most wealthy people in the world. They're not the most well thought of people in the world. But there's only one God, and we are his chosen people. We have a covenant with him. He has a covenant with us. That is the basis of Jewish identity. Their relationship with Yahweh, their relationship with the Lord God Almighty. So there is an arrogance, even a hubris there, a pride, an overweening pride among Jews at being God's chosen people, especially at this time. The Greeks, on the other hand, invented theater, comedy, tragedy, philosophy, science, physics, biology, democracy, Epicurean philosophy, Stoicism. They have Plato, Aristotle. Their cities are lenses of creativity designed to bring out the creativity of their people. They've got temples, amphitheaters, agorae. They talk, they listen, they have the sophists, and they beat the Persians. So, you know who's God's gift to humanity? The Greeks have this arrogance. Now, I don't know if you ever had a friend who really thinks that they are the bright, shining center of the universe, but there are people like this. They're sort of the center of friendships. Everyone gravitates to them. They're the people everyone pays attention to. Have you ever gotten two people like this and locked them in the same room together for a while? Because it's interesting, if you do that, to see what happens. Because they're both used to being the dominant person, the charismatic center of all the relationships. And then they're there with one another. And sometimes they get along. Sometimes, usually, in fact, they hate each other. Because they are each other. They are mirror images of the same sort of personality. The Greeks are God's gift to humanity because they're so creative. The Jews are God's gift to humanity because they worship the only one true God. And he cares about them. So it's like oil and water. The Greeks and the Jews hate one another. They do not get along. And you can't keep them separated because the Greeks rule the Jews. And like the Babylonians, the Greeks say, you know, the Hebrews are great people except for this worship of their desert god. So the Greeks, they decide that they're going to mess with the Jewish faith. They're going to mess with the Jewish temple, which Solomon had built, and the Babylonians had destroyed. The Greeks are going to force people to eat pig meat. The Greeks are going to interfere with Jewish custom in all sorts of ways. When faced with this Greek effort, and this is only 100 years to 150 years before Christ, the Jews, they have some mountain boys called the Maccabees. There are brothers, there's a whole clan. And Judas Maccabee and the others say, we're not going to stand for this. We're going to fight you. Right. A bunch of mountain boys with no heavy weapons, no fleet, no treasury, no armored formations of soldiers is going to take on one of the successor states to Alexander the Bleeping Great. Are you nuts? And the answer of the Maccabees, in fact, is if God's with us, who can stand against us? We're not responsible for what happens except for saying yes to God. So the Maccabees go into battle in a logically hopeless situation. A group of civilian fighters fighting a guerrilla campaign against one of the most powerful empires of the day. And their answer is faith. What does this sound like? Today, over the last 20 years, Who follows the same logic? If God is with us, who can stand against us? Who doesn't have nuclear weapons? The most powerful navy in the world. The most powerful air force in the world. Who doesn't have the money that goes into our military? Who doesn't have Marines, Special Forces, Delta Force, Army Rangers? Who doesn't have all of that and still fights? Do any of you know? As we sort of hinted at this at the beginning. Who is willing to fight the United States? An empire that seems unbeatable. The last people that tried beating us in open battle were the Germans and Japanese. And we destroyed their countries and still have troops in both. Who is it? I'm rolling. Any one of you could answer. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. 20. Small one.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Take a guess. If you're wrong, we'll laugh at you and you'll fail at life. But other than that, nothing will happen.
Okay, when you said they didn't have a strong anything or like a like a strong air force or anything like
Yep.
that, I literally just thought of the poor kids in Africa. I don't know why. I don't
Okay.
know why.
If you're talking about the poor kids in Somalia, then maybe you're onto it. Because we fought against street gangs in Somalia.
The Muslims?
The Muslims. Islamist terrorists. They don't have a chance. If we wanted to, we could nuke them. We wouldn't even have to lose a single soldier. But they're still fighting us. Why? Because as much as I hate them, I hate some of them. As much as I dislike others, as much as I don't respect them in many ways, what I do respect is their dedication. They actually believe that if God is with them, who can stand against them? It's not a matter of logic. It's a matter of faith. If they keep fighting, sooner or later they will win. They believe this. And frankly, the sort of half-hearted way that we fought this war for 20 years has given them a chance of having victory in Afghanistan. It's given them partial victory in Iraq. So are they wrong? The point of the Maccabee story, 100 years before Jesus, and this is going to affect the life of Jesus as well, vitally it's going to affect his life, is that the Jews are under a hostile Greek empire that seems super powerful. But through the Maccabees, they rise up and they oppose, and God grants them victory. Because in fact, the empire that they're fighting is like a redwood tree that's rotten inside. It's this massive tree, hundreds of feet tall. From the outside, it looks indestructible. But all you have to do is lean on it the wrong way, and the internal rot collapses the tree, and you better run. That's what happens. The Maccabees are that push, and it's the beginning of the end for that empire. With God with us, who can stand against us? All we have to do is believe. It's not a question of calculating the risk. It's not a matter of logic. That is a lesson that echoes through Jesus' time, and it's why so many people are tempted to be terrorists against Rome, and it echoes through our time. And the Islamist terrorists take that message and they use it. And when people try telling them, you can't beat the United States, look at the forces, they say, it doesn't matter. We've got God on our side. And that's an irrefutable argument. It really is. It's a tough thing to fight. So, any thoughts before we leave off? Next time I'll talk about the life of Jesus Christ in this overall story of the background to the 9/11 attacks. Is that a hand? No. Okay. I see no hands. You may talk quietly among yourselves until dismissal. And I will stop the live stream for those of you at home. Bye. Oh. But first, I've got to start my video up here. Bippity boppity.